All right, if you could please take your seats, it is time for our next session, which is our first panel of the day. This panel is titled The Democratization of AI. It will be moderated by Ken Zamkow. He's the General Manager North America of Run.ai. Then also we have joining us Jagadish Mahendran from Fellow Robots, Yukti Bhambhani from Unilever, Paul Nemirovsky from Dmetrics, and Subroto Mukherjee from GSK. They'll be introducing themselves in just a minute. Thank you for joining us.
All right, so hey everyone, I'm Ken, and as mentioned, the topic of our panel today is the democratization of AI, which for the purpose of this session, we're going to talk a little bit about what that actually means. If AI was something that was considered pure tech in the past, how that impacts the retail and CPG industries, and how that applies to the work of each one of our panelists, and what organizations need to do in the next few years to fulfill the potential of AI for their companies and overcome some potential challenges. So I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, and we'll start with Paul at the end and work our way down, and then we'll get started.
All right. Thank you, Ken. I'm Paul. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Dmetrics. We are a bunch of computer scientists. I must profess complete ignorance. I'm not a retailer, not a marketer. What we know how to do is how to analyze massive amounts of unstructured text for our clients. We work primarily with finance and healthcare companies, as well as a smattering of others. Before I did the company with my colleague. Before that, I did my PhD at MIT in machine learning. And before that, I was a performing musician.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jagadish. I am an AI engineer at Fellow Robots. A little bit background about Fellow Robots. We build robots to automate retail inventory management. And I am mostly involved in design and development of the AI pipeline for automating the retail inventory management.
Hey everyone, I am Yukti. I work as a data scientist at Unilever. I work for their digital R&D department. I work across categories to support them in their consumer science research. I'm pretty much hands-on with supervised and unsupervised machine learning techniques. Other than that, I'm also responsible for driving a lot of AI endeavors within the R&D space so as to make the whole process faster, consistent, and more efficient. Prior to that, I also have experience working with other retail organizations and delivering customized BI solutions to them. Very excited to be here.
Hello, everyone. This is Subroto Mukherjee. I'm the lead of innovation for GSK. GSK has three main divisions: pharma, vaccines, and consumer healthcare. I'm part of the consumer healthcare. What I'm trying to help GSK is to move ahead in the innovation continuum space, where we have sustaining innovation, incremental innovation, and disruptive innovation. We support our shopper science lab, where we do the research, commercial research on shoppers' behavior or retailers, how do they place their different products for us. And then we also have a digital innovation hub, which we try to kind of help and create new digital medicine and new disruptive technologies for our consumers' journey, help them in the self-care journey.
Great. And just to wrap up, I'm Ken Zamkow. I lead the North America activity for Run.ai. We are an Israeli startup that does compute optimization for AI and deep learning. So we use a combination of automated distributed computing, model and data parallelism, and virtualization of GPUs to speed up deep learning processes and to make processes easier for teams and to speed up AI delivery. And in terms of my background, I've helped launch or launched a number of other hardware or software startups in the past. Primarily, those were either telecommunications or video-related companies, so now making the switch from that type of hardware to GPUs. And maybe to get started with our panel. So Yukti, let's go to you first, and then we'll ask the other panelists. So each one of us here has a different role in AI, different type of organization, different company size. And so I wanted to ask all the panelists again, starting with Yukti, where do you see the biggest opportunities in your focus, in your area of focus in the next 3 to 5 years as it relates to AI?
Sure. So I think for me, personalization is the key. We have seen leaders from major retail giants since yesterday have talked about their customized user experience. For example, Walmart, Zappos, all these firms are concentrating on delivering a customized user experience to their users. So understanding the context and producing the right amount, the right product at the right place is going to be very crucial to an organization's success. A particular vision that I have into the future is, let's say I want to buy a shampoo product, right? I walk into a store, or even when I'm shopping online, I take a picture of my hair, I upload it, and the machine comes back with a recommendation based on the quality, texture, or color of my hair. So it just makes the whole decision-making process really easy for the user. So that's going to be very, very crucial. And it's not just important because it's making the whole user experience very comfortable and convenient, but it's also because it helps the organization a lot in return, because we are getting access to first-hand consumer data. For example, I work in the R&D space right now, and if we want to understand anything about our users, their likes, dislikes, we have to conduct market research surveys. And the data that we get out of them is very confined and limited. Even though with the advent of unstructured data and having access to it has kind of made that easier and bridged the gap, but still, like to trust the sources from where we are getting this data, I think having access to first-hand consumer data is going to be very powerful, and it's going to help us understand our consumers in a much, much better way. And it's going to drive a lot in terms of the ingredients, the products, the innovations that the companies are bringing into market.
Subroto, what's your take? What are the biggest opportunities you're looking at right now within GSK?
Yeah, so what we currently do is the 3 key areas which we kind of focus right now is the first one is, as Yukti was mentioned, is marketing. How do we better market our products? Where the personalization, or how do we get consumer insights, or we do a CDP, consumer data platform, so we better understand the audience segments. That's our very key first initiative. What I'm looking at, the second one is very driving factor for our retailers. They are kind of working with us in collaboration is the in-store execution of retail, like what is the best way best experience you can provide. And the third area which we are looking also, we have been working on a couple of projects, is to have a better supply chain inventory optimization, which is where we are trying to add AI and machine learning more in the sector, so we have a better demand forecasting, and as well as trying to get a better your supply chain inventory stocks, your safety stocks, your dynamic stocks. I'm seeing a very big requirement to have change our planners from a general planners to a smart planners at this stage.
Great. Paul, what's your take?
So as I said, I don't know much about retail and marketing. So instead, let me tell you a story of my yesterday, which is in preparation for this conference. We decided to take a look at what are women that shop on Amazon and look for dresses talk about. So what's your take? What is the percentage of reviews? And we analyzed, give or take, 250,000 of those, because people write a lot about dresses, it turns out. What percentage of these reviews mention the top feature and what that feature is? Name a number. How many of them?
5%.
Up? What is the most dominant feature? How many of them have it? I'll tell you, 89%. There is a man who understands. I didn't know that because I have very limited experience wearing dresses. But the thing is that then you start looking at it, and then you see that there is all these people that disclose highly personal things about what is their height, what is their weight, what kind of thing works, what doesn't. And yet there's absolutely no way on Amazon. Amazon is a pretty developed company, but there is no way for that woman to go and say, I'm 5'10", and I'm 140 pounds, so what here fits me, according to everybody in here? No, there is nothing like that. You can search maybe for 5'4", 5'5", 5'6", and go crazy. So I think the opportunity is that. It's how do you actually know anything about your consumers other than what they click? What do you do with that? Do you give them tools to search? Do you give yourself ability to learn about them? You guys tell.
Great. Jagadish?
Yeah, so I would like to talk on the other side of the spectrum. Like most of them covered about the how to get the customers, understand the customers and stuff like that. So what we try to solve with Fellow Robots is that how to automate the retail inventory management, which is by itself is a complex problem to solve. To give an idea, if for one employee to perform the retail inventory management by himself, checking where is out of stock and what is out of stock, and if there is any price errors, and if there is any planogram compliance errors, to do this task by one employee, it would take around, I would say, like 10 days. And this is a very tedious task. It takes a lot of time. And at the same time, if you optimize this process, I think it can be a huge boost, like brand positioning and stuff like that. I think AI is something that can be very useful in solving the retail inventory management, helping the employees and brands, stuff like that.
Great. So we heard about your specific focus. Let's try to take it one level up. So in the long run, how is AI going to change the retail and CPG industries kind of beyond just what you're seeing in your day-to-day? So Subroto, do you want to get us started and we'll go down the line?
Yeah, so the immediate thing I'm seeing from the retail perspective, since we are more on the CPG side, we work with the retail, is in-store executions. I know a lot of us have been hearing about the Amazon Go. Walmart has an innovation retail lab where they're like wiring up the entire stores, from sensors to how you kind of go there and smart shelves, which we can, when you walk to the shelves, the shelves kind of start talking to you, and you can get coupons and your personalized information. That's, I think, a very important factor we are seeing in terms of in-store executions. The other thing we are seeing is, as Yukti was mentioning, is more of personalizations. This is where we kind of chasing and finding out more and more audiences we can get to connect better, can start understanding their requirement, as I was mentioning about the weights and height. If you look at Stitch Fix, they are behind the scenes, they have a very good algorithm, AI algorithm, they kind of use to kind of match and find your personal information or your interests in how do you kind of shop, and they can start customizing your requirement. I was looking at a job opening, which is like they want to hire a person, which is they are developing your dresses based on all your sentiments, or your different things you do in personal life, which is very AI-driven dress design. So this is kind of a thing which is coming up more. Visual search is becoming more and more predominant, which kind of, how do you kind of use voice, your Alexas and Googles of the world, and start engaging them better in our world. That's what we are kind of trying to experiment more in our side to get a help from AI in retail space. And supply chain, I mentioned, is very critical. We are seeing is our inventories are not optimized sometimes, or retailers are not in sync with us. Sometimes we kind of try to make it more optimized. So we are converting our planners to a smart planner. So they have been using different tools, but making more optimized tools to make a better decision on how to plan the inventory from inventory cycle.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's going to affect all the different functions that are a key to a retail or CPG organization. It's going to affect supply chain, which is already happening, like Subroto mentioned about inventory management, demand forecasting, and all that. And it's going to, it's already in the marketing space. There are targeted marketing campaigns that are happening based on understanding various subgroups of the population. Then it's also the one area that I think is relatively less explored as of now, and as we become more and more data-driven, I think R&D is one space where there's a lot of opportunity. So yeah, it's going to affect all the different functions, and the entire process is going to become way faster and data-driven.
So I personally feel I think AI is going to change retail to a large extent. I think it's already, you're seeing the changes. For example, like Paul gave a very good example of how to see like how customers are interacting with the products, what they like about seeing the trends and stuff like that. I think insights like that can be very valuable. I think that's what each and every company is looking for always, right? So I recently came across this blog, and it covers how AI has already changed retail. It dates back from 1960s. It talks about how the payment system without a cashier was started, right? Just using the kiosks, right? And then covers the unmanned stores and the style matching and the virtual makeup assistants and stuff like that. And this is on the customer end. And for the employers, we are already seeing the robots able to do inventory management. I think there are a lot of companies trying to solve how to lift objects and how to place objects in particular place. I think this is going to be a tremendous impact in retail space. I think the companies, especially the warehouses, are looking forward for a solution like this. I think it's a very exciting phase of AI, especially in retail space.
I think what is going to change about AI is everyone in this room, because today there's this weird dichotomy, schizophrenic really, where you have the people that know how to operate all kinds of technical tools, and then there are people that know something about their business. And often I come to client companies and I sit with people that spent their entire career in something, and they say, oh, you have a PhD from MIT in machine learning. Tell me how to do this thing. And here's this person who spent the last 30 years doing the thing, asking me how to do thing. The secret is I have no idea. They do. It's just that what they need is the right range to convert them to this world-class data scientist overnight. And I think that's what is coming. This is what we provide, but also where I think the trend, the wave is. It's about each and single one of you figuring out what are the interesting questions. Let's say that there's a magic wand. It gives you all the insights and then some. What do you do with it? How do you structure it? That's something that nobody but you can answer. So
Paul, maybe we'll continue with that and stay with you. So what are the biggest challenges in reaching that potential of AI, of reaching that promise?
I think there is an organizational challenge and a cultural one. It's not technical, to preempt that bit. It's an organizational challenge because organizations have been, many organizations, at least in the financial and healthcare space, which I know a lot more about, a lot more than zero. There are these silos that are supposed to do technology, and then there is the business, and that organizational structure is not conducive to the business side of the organization learning something, or to the technical side understanding anything about business. And the two sit sort of in silos, and then there's people who are supposed to mitigate between them. And so this entire organization is not the way that really AI should be deployed. And the cultural part is that many people believe that they can't, because it's numbers and it's lots of data and it's something complex. And I just mentioned the name of some unsupervised learning algorithm, and people's eyes glaze. But it doesn't need to be that way. It's, again, a question of the range. But I think the more we can surpass this and convince people that, yes, they actually can, and yes, they have the right questions, and the rest is mechanics, and mechanics can be solved, then we'll see a very different way of AI getting deployed and acted upon.
Right. Jagadish, what's your take?
So I think I would like to say, look from the technical perspective. I think right now I would say there is still a lot of stuff that has to be done in terms of improving the technology by itself, because it's the AI is being famous only since, I would say, maybe last 10 years or something. And when we started to see the face recognition and stuff like that, that's when I think AI is getting more mainstream. I think technology is more useful when it is simple, convenient, and useful. And right now we are having this conversation because we have realized the usefulness of AI. But in the technical perspective, the challenges are, if you want to run such an algorithm, like what does it take? How much hardware is needed? And what kind of technical expertise is needed? And where can you find them, right? Is it deployable on a smartphone? Because the models have like millions of parameters. Can you run so much of calculation on a smartphone device? Of course, there are clouds, but can you get there? Is it scalable? Yes, it's of course scalable, but if you look at how internet was like 15 years ago, like it was very, very like pretty complicated technology, right? So I think down the line, I would say maybe 4 years down the line, I would say the AI will be pretty simple. Anyone should be able to use it, and I think most important thing is the awareness. Like there is a severe misconception about AI that AI is about programming, and that's something that has to be overcome. Like it's an interdisciplinary area where anyone can do and develop AI, and and that awareness takes time to reach. Once that is there, I think anyone can develop their own technology and make it seamless and easy and simpler.
Right. Yukti, what are the biggest challenges you see?
Yeah, so if we talk about personalization, right, and especially as we are moving more towards conversational tools, I think one of the biggest challenges is understanding the context. And one of the very famous examples that goes around while talking about context or explaining context is, consider the statement, we saw her duck. So now this could mean 4 different things. Either we saw someone's bird, we saw someone bend down to avoid something, somebody named we saw a duck. So like, how do you explain when you're communicating to a machine? So I think a lot of extensive training has to go into these models, and that's why I think contextual models are in place. But that's definitely a challenge because I don't think this has been so sophisticated as to crack the context. As you're interacting with a human, it's very easy for a human to get the context, but not for a machine. So that's definitely one challenge when it comes to personalization. The other is as we get more and more personalized, we'll also get access to personal data. So the whole ethical issues around if you can collect this information and keep this information about a user, and then of course the data breach issues and data security issues, your security measures have to be very, very strong so as to make sure that there's no identity theft happening. And third one that I see is a slightly different take on this. And I'm looking at it from a consumer perspective and not from an organization perspective, because when we think about automation and all that, it's not just the organizations that are going to automate their processes, it's also the consumers. And the reason I say this is particularly in terms of CPG products. These are the commodities that have to be replaced regularly. And it's a very monotonous task for any user. So I think they have to keep ordering something on a regular basis. So most likely it's going to be automated. And when it's not a user, it's a machine going to order your household groceries, let's say. How do you still manage to keep yourselves relevant? Because then it's not even about personalization anymore, right? So I think that's another challenge.
Great. Subroto?
So what I see in terms of AI or the ML machine learning implementation in our organization is the biggest top 3, I would say the first 2 is always data. We don't have either enough data, we don't have quality data, we don't have prep data. The third one, I would have always said data, but again, I just go change it to a point of organizational structure where technology and business are like sometimes moving at different paces. So we have to make sure we kind of, all our business team members get aligned with under this space and understand the importance of machine learning and AI to help them to get a better insights of the business. So that's one key thing we are right now facing is because we have gone to a couple of mergers, a couple of different organizations being rolled into us. Data sets are lying all across places. The biggest input, I think, to even have a better successful ML model to run is have a very solid data structure, data is in place. So we are trying to make that harmonized right now. We are trying to centralize the data. We're kind of making it into one location. We're kind of making it more easy to prep going forward. That's our key challenge we are seeing at this point from AI perspective.
Great. All right, so for our next topic, this is, I think, a current favorite. So on this panel alone, we already uncovered a lot of use cases ranging from analytics to marketing optimization to supply chain to things like knowing your hair color to get the right product to actual robots that go through a warehouse and other autonomous machines. And at the same time, I think these days AI is often thrown out there in things that really have nothing to do with AI or machine learning and so on. So in your guys' take, what actually is AI and what isn't AI? Maybe we'll start here, Subroto, and go down the line again.
So for me, AI is more of, we talk about the word artificial intelligence, right? So we are trying to move from our computers being intelligent enough or intelligent, and then we are saying is going to the augmented intelligence kind of mode. And then now we are looking at artificial intelligence where we are trying to mimic our human behavior from sense to reaction to thinking, and we are trying to see how we can achieve that similar parallel effort in our systems so we can get to augment us or help us out going forward. That's our typical, very simplified, I think, way of putting an AI in perspective for my side.
Yeah, so in my opinion, I think more than just mimicking, it's also like, as Subroto said, that it's augmenting humans' capabilities of productivity. So yeah, so in ML or AI should be able to augment humans' productivity or capability. And also in terms of the buzzword being thrown around, I think as long as we are not coding rules explicitly into a program, I think the task would fall within the domains of AI. So the key is to not give rules. Give the data to a machine and let it infer its own rules. And that falls within the task of the AI.
So I think this is a very important question. I really like this question. So this is how I look at this problem, right? Like how you can solve a problem. Like how have you been solving a problem? Let's say you take a software solution. How can you solve this problem, right? So usually the paradigm is you have a program, Ash include and stuff like that. And then how we try to solve is you have a logical constraint. If this, do this, right? If not that, do something else, right? And then at some point your code fails. It's like, oh, it's in corner case, like how to fix this? It's not a big deal. I'll just add one more if clause. It's going to fix the solution, right? But that's not how AI works, right? How AI works is like I'm going to collect a huge amount of data, and that data is going to define the solution. And what is more interesting is like I want to solve this particular problem using this data. However, you can solve other problems also using this data, right? So the interesting part here about AI is the solution is revolving around data, right? And you can make a lot of sense of data. So I have this data, and then I train a model, right? There is a learning curve. Once you have the learning curve, once the learning is done, you have the program. But the older paradigm is you develop the program first with the input, and then you get the output. But right now in supervised learning, how it is happening is we have input, and we have the output, and we have the data, and the program is kind of the output. It's a total shift in the paradigm, right? I think it's a different way of solving problem. Yes, of course, yes, we, in a very normal way of solving, saying, able to solve a problem, what human can solve, or in a way how a human can solve, right?
So let me refine that. So if you have a human that runs a bunch of queries on a database without coding anything, but that human then came to a conclusion based on that data and those query tools that you should do something, and then they code it, does that constitute AI?
Yes, I would say like very less part of coding. It's like putting things together more like putting things together. I think you put it in the perfect way.
Oh.
A friend of mine sent me a little image that said machine learning is what you create in Java, and AI is what is made in PowerPoint. So that's on the difference. But I remember talking to Marvin Minsky, who, for those not aware, was basically the guy that popularized the concept of AI after Asimov came up with it. He was a professor at MIT, and according to him, nothing of what happens today is AI, period, and not going to be for the foreseeable future. We do not have the methods to give the machine a comprehension that equals an intelligent being or something that can reliably be faked as such during tests, etc. So that said, I think that AI, putting aside the philosophical perspective, the paradigm that we are trying to get to is where it's something that a human can interact with and become better as a result. And as a result, it's an augmentation mechanism. So I think the winning types of AI will be the ones that know really well how to solicit human feedback at the right point in time, and then do something with it that the human itself would not expect or act upon independently.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about the AI race. As some of you guys mentioned, data obviously is a very important component. So some companies that started out as pure digital companies often have a lot of data, and that data is structured in a relatively organized and new way. Other companies can be very large companies that have had decades, if not more, of data, but transforming that data into something usable might be a little bit challenging. So data is one side of it. Another side of it is access to talent. And of course, there are a variety of other factors. So, how do you keep up in this AI race? Do you, are the Googles and Amazons and Facebooks of the world destined to win this, or what's the ecosystem going to look like in the next few years? And again, how do you compete in this world?
I think AI is not an overnight process. There is a logical process that ultimately makes an organization AI-driven, and one of the most logical steps in that is getting the data, becoming a data-driven organization. So no matter where an organization is right now, as long as they're collecting the data and they have, in future, they have access to certain, a good amount of data to leverage it to actually implement AI, that's the first part. Implementing AI is the second part, and which I can talk about, look at it from a way, like in the past, democratization of anything has, in democratization of anything, open source has been the king. So all these open source models, AI models, are going to come into place. Already some of them are here, which is AutoKeras, and then Uber also launched something very recently. So all this is going to be leveraged by organizations which can't build their own, which don't have in-house AI capabilities. So I don't think they're going to go out of the race, but definitely they have to start by at least having access to loads of data, which is their own organization. And the other thing that you can look at, the small and mid-sized organizations can also look at, is crowdsourcing, if that's an option for them, and they can collaborate with other similar firms and leverage each other's data, then that would be the key.
Who wants to take it next?
I can say that. So basically, we don't have to everybody doesn't have to be a Google, Microsoft, or compete with them. It's not a competition here. It's how do you solve your business problems in a more effective manner. You can just pick up tools available. There are all tools available very easily. You can customize or use them in your organizations. You don't have to have in-house resources. You can have some. You can work with some vendor organizations or some partner organizations to kind of enable you. And then you can slowly adopt into your organization a mindset to start supporting this or have a will to support it. The key thing for the business is to start embedding AI into their mindset, which we also trying to make sure everybody kind of gets there. So it's not about Google or Amazon or anything. They might have more money thrown at the problem. I think here you can be smarter and just make it start small, start experimenting, start seeing the results, and then move on to the next step. We kind of try to put an agile process in our organizations where we do a small test, learn, and fail. It's good. Next, move to the next kind of model there. So we can definitely embrace AI and make sure you can have ML part of your organization going forward for more better insights.
So I think like when it comes to competing with big companies like Google and Facebook or Amazon, I think it's not about the technology itself. I think it's about the creative solution, like how well you can come up with a creative solution. And if you're trying to solve a problem that Google or Facebook or all these big companies are trying to solve, and I think it's going to be very hard. Especially right now, all these companies have access to so much data. I think you need to find that niche area, unique area, and how special, how special are you in a way to solve that solution. I think if you're really special in AI, like probably you should really focus that you have this data and you have this very specific way and a unique way of getting this data. And once you have the data collection phase, and then you also have a unique way of looking at the data and how well you can make sense out of the data, and then give it to the wide space of consumers, right? I think that's where a company has to think how special you can be from what the existing company are not doing right now.
I think the way for any company to compete is to encode the expertise of their employees, because Google does not have retailers and marketers and people who understand supply chains. They have engineers. It's not a game of numbers that big non-tech companies can win. Over 80%, 85 I think percent of PhD graduates in machine learning from top universities stay in academia because it's more interesting problems, and the ones that go out there go either to the Google, Amazon, maybe a little bit of Apple and Facebook, or go to niche startups that solve particular interesting problems. So that's not the way to compete, but I think what the others mentioned about unique data that you have, that's an advantage, but most and foremost is the expertise of the people. That expertise that every day at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Goes into the elevator and leaves the company, and then the next day comes back, and it's kind of crazy if you think.
So as a follow-up to this, do small to mid-sized retailers or regional retailers, do they stand a chance in an AI world, and what do they do to stay relevant and succeed to whoever wants to take it?
So I think I can take it. So of course, yes, I think when it comes to retail, I think retail is not the competition in retail is a little different. I think probably you cannot compare Google or Facebook with, you cannot include those. However, Google is trying to get into retail, but they have not been successful. I think what's unique about retail is the kind of interaction in retail is different with how people interact with Google or Facebook, right? It's not about using phones. It's not about using your desktop or whatever. It's about you go to the store and you buy something and you want to spend less time, but you want to get the best product ever, right? And that's something really hard to solve. But I think that's some area where you can be extremely creative. By extremely creative, you can keep a lot of ideas open. Like maybe you can use VR to create like how a sofa looks like in your house. I think a few companies are already doing this, right? Or maybe you can see. Before you get to the store, maybe you can find if the particular product is available in the store or not, right? Maybe you can have the accessibility of Facebook is so easy, you have to just click a button on the phone, right? And if you can make the retail application as simple as that, I think it can be a huge success. It's making the process as simple as possible. I think that's where you can really focus more.
And do you think the smaller size companies can create that user experience to compete?
I think so. At least if you go to a small retail store, let's say you want to a person is trying to find a product, and then he's there in the store, and he couldn't find the product, and he's like he's frustrated. You took his car, he went there, he spent a lot of time, and the product is not there. And if he has some simple solution by which he can track, this product is moving fast, and people in this particular part, in this particular region like this product really well, recognize that product, feel it. I think it's definitely a very important area where the medium-sized retailer can improvise on.
Any other takes on this, or?
I mean, the reason why I drink this coffee is not because it's the biggest coffee vendor in the world. It's because I like the product. So I think that's how smaller companies compete. The question is, what can they do to drive people to them? And I think that's, again, profiling way better who are the people, how to minimize their time to purchase, how to do all the things that they already know how to do. But technology is arranged to improve on that, but not to try to compete on some sort of general machine learning solution.
Just to add, like smaller retailers are coming up. It's like more of a startups, right? We have startups. They are still thriving in the space of bigger companies. So I think small retailers can do the same thing, be more creative, like he was explaining, connect with the consumers more. When the consumer walks into the store, they have a better connect. They can easily help them out with the smaller footprint they have to find the products right away. And then obviously, doing any new creative stuff is nowadays more commoditized. You don't have to hire a big gun players to solve the problem for you. You can have a smaller solutions available to them.
Okay. Great. So let's go back up to larger enterprises. So for Yukti and Subroto, what does the enterprise AI process look like in terms of making the business case, in terms of then figuring out how to execute on it? And then maybe as a follow-up question on that, yesterday we saw a couple of very different approaches with large companies to tackling AI. So Walmart on one side showed different innovation groups within their company. So they have Walmart Labs working on certain problems. They showed the IRL store that is separately working on other problems. Then if in contrast to that, we saw Nordstrom talk us through how they built their unified in-house ML platform and the tools that they've integrated to create that platform. So how do you guys see that AI process, and does your company have any kind of innovation labs in your company or any kind of in-house ML platforms and so on?
So from GSK, what we have a bunch of that. We have Innovation Hub, which we call Digital Innovation Hub. We have an incubator where we can have small incubate certain ideas there. We have a shopper science lab, which I was mentioning we had, where we do eye tracking. When we bring in consumers, retailers, look at which areas of interest they're looking at a product shelf. We look at the eye tracking, look at the mobility of the hand, which one is the interest coming in there. We, from an innovation perspective, we have innovation fund being allocated right now. So we have to put up a business case and hypothesis, what really makes sense to get approval from that. And we have a big room planning fund, kind of a Shark Tank kind of model, where people will come and present their ideas beforehand. They give the hypothesis, the user story, the success stories, what the measurement is done. We kind of, based on that, they can start allocating fund to that. We don't have yet any in-house ML platform. We are still using the existing available platforms there from Microsoft or Google's TensorFlow. We are still kind of leveraging any niche players. We're looking at them at this point.
Yeah, in terms of Unilever's AI initiatives, I think obviously it has to start from recognizing that a task requires considerable complexity and human effort, and that is where AI can help us. Once we have identified an area where we can implement AI, it's usually a matter of deciding who does it. So we have internal teams, as well as we work a lot with external vendors. So either we identify external vendors or internal teams. The preference is usually with internal teams, but then we evaluate if we have the in-house capability, if they have the resources that they can commit to our timelines, and so on and so forth. One of the things while evaluating external vendors we look at is the whole architecture stuff, because it has to align with whatever Unilever currently uses. Mm-hmm. There is an entire IT process that they have to go through. Mm-hmm. And once we have identified the group or the vendor that's going to work on, then we take it from there. So in terms of AI groups within the firm, yes, there are specific AI groups, as well as, so there is an AI accelerator group, there is another group, Automation Factory, which specifically works on AI projects. So yeah, we kind of usually leverage those, but then there are multiple others in different functions as well.
And you mentioned sometimes building your own, sometimes bringing in third parties. What's your company's tendency usually? Do you prefer to build your own? Do you prefer to bring a third party? We talked a little bit about open source. Do you guys like open source? Do you prefer proprietary? And everyone else can jump in after that as well.
Yeah, sure. So I think, again, it's a mix of both. I think so far the focus has been quite a lot on external vendors. We work a lot with external vendors. I think the primary goal is to keep the focus on our primary area of business, which is CPG company. But it's changing. We are hiring a lot more data scientists and building a lot more in-house capabilities. And I think all the organizations should realize the need for that and move towards it. And in terms of open source and proprietary, again, that's changing. So far, the softwares that were used were like SAS and Jump and all, which are pretty much proprietary from a data security point of view. But now it's again moving to open source to be able to leverage the powerful tools that exist in the market today.
So I think when it comes to enterprise AI, I think at Fellow Robots, we also have an in-house AI platform. But the idea is, like, if you want to really build your own AI platform, it's pretty time-consuming. It needs a lot of expertise, not just engineering expertise. You would also need a lot of research expertise. So I think what's happening right now is, hey, I found this something open source. It works really well. Maybe it's from TensorFlow or from PyTorch, or it could be from any other platform, right? So I think in overall, this is my idea, because I have no exposure to a lot of other enterprise AI solutions. But the idea is, I think they combine the best of different platforms. Maybe for this solution, this particular part of framework works really well, so I'm going to use this. And for the other one, maybe that one doesn't work. It's like putting things that are available online, or maybe add your own stuff a little bit on top of it and make it a little more special and more customized. I think that's how enterprise AI is looking right now. And by research by itself, there is no developing from scratch. It's like using the existing tools and putting in such a way that it is more easier for that particular enterprise to solve a particular problem. So I think in future, I would say probably there'll be a point of convergence where there'll be just 2 or 3 frameworks which is prominent, and you can maybe just use it and add a layer on top of it, and works best for you. Right now there is Django, for example, in Python, and that one is a pretty researched area, and it seems to work really well. So most of the companies, what they do is they kind of use Django and put a wrapper around it, which makes it simple for that particular enterprise. I think that's how AI is going to turn out, maybe a few years ahead.
So I don't work in an enterprise company, but if you believe what Gartner says, they say 80% of all AI deployments fail in the enterprise. And the reason I think many of them fail is because it's not something that is set up for the company. It's these siloed organizations within that live in their little castles. And I think that what is important is for the organization, before they start anything with the word AI or ML or whatever, is to define why. What is it that you want to make? What are the clear, measurable criteria of success? Have you had the business people truly understand what it is and sign off on? If yes, it has a far better likelihood of success. Otherwise, it's a great tool to increase the amount of guys like me that get overpaid.
So that's a great point. And we do want to leave some time for audience questions, but maybe real quick, if anybody wants to take this. So how do you get decision makers on board, or people who have a lot of industry experience and a lot of organizational knowledge, but don't really know much about AI? How do you get people like that involved and on board with AI initiatives? Whoever wants to take it.
For us, we kind of start learning sessions from them, a quick workshop, We kind of have workshops with them. We have ideation sessions with them just to give the importance of AI, and then start bringing them on board and show the real value of what it is with some use cases, examples for them. That's simple we're trying to do, at least at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the challenges that we are also currently facing. All the people in the organization, if you look at them, they have been working in the organization for 15, 20 years, in some cases even more. So they're used to their ways of working. So they're kind of quite resistant to it when it comes to, telling them that, yeah, we are going to implement an AI initiative in place. But I think the mindset is definitely changing, and it's definitely all about changing the mindset. And for one of the things that we constantly do is conduct upskilling sessions, lunch and learns, on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. It doesn't even take more than that, because if you don't keep consistently, involve them, keep them in touch with what's happening in the machine learning AI world, I think they're gonna not be as involved. So the key is to keep them involved on a very regular basis.
I think when it comes to decision making, it's extremely important that a person is experienced, or at least he has to be having an in-depth knowledge. So you cannot make a person who's new to AI and is you're a board member or something, and you make this decision overnight. I think that's not how it should work. AI is a relatively new field, and the person has to be in the field for some time, and he has to be educated on that side. And if not, probably decision making can be really dangerous. Yeah, I would say,
So actually, we've been running these workshops for the top management at large firms that we work with, where we give each person in the room, we gather 20, 30 at a time. We give each one of them an iPad. It runs our platform, and then we have them create a machine learning model without having to write code in 5 minutes. And then they compete with each other. Whose model is better? And then it processes a few 100,000 documents, and they start extracting insights that they have done without having to write code, learn what machine learning means, what algorithms do I use, all that stuff, and that turns them on. They suddenly say, I can, and something shifts.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right, so like I said, we want to leave some time. We're going to do a couple of quick fires. The first quick fire, can you each name 1 or 2 tools or technologies or processes that you either use regularly that you really rely on and like, or something that you've recently discovered that you started using?
For me, Azure ML, the automated ML from Azure Databricks platform we are using, and then we are also looking at Alteryx for data engineering and making it better, apart from TensorFlow.
I think in terms of tools, everyone who's looking to get into AI should learn Python, get better with Python. In terms of techniques, I think reinforcement learning is one area which is very less explored and underrated, that people should be more familiar with it. And in terms of processes, I think Agile is the way to go forward. Learn fast, test something fast and fail fast so that it's not working, or if it's working, then go forward with it.
I think there are so many tools out there. Pretty fun. So at the same time, it's confusing also. To name few, I think, they already mentioned, TensorFlow, Keras, and one interesting stuff I came across recently is the Fast AI. This is a course by Dr. Jeremy Howard. It's a very interesting course. The approach is very different. He kind of teaches the essence of AI by treating AI as some interdisciplinary course. The goal of the course is anyone should be able to use AI, like I was talking.
Yes, yeah.
And the best part about this course is people from a musician or an artist are actually using this course and are learning a lot of interesting things. I think that's how AI should. That's the right direction of AI.
Cool.
That
Paul?
I think fast AI will be something that people check.
We can go.
All right, so I guess with that, actually, we had one more quick fire. In one line, something you're reading right now, or a resource that you usually refer to for knowledge and so on.
I'm just using the Bitcoin book, the blockchain book, Truth and Everything, for the future of everything using blockchain.
I listen to Data Skeptic podcasts. There's a company called Data Skeptic, and you can go to their website and check out their podcasts.
Anything in particular, actually.
I'm reading a book called I'm God by Giacomo Sartori. It's a fantastic book. Nothing to do with machine learning.
All right. Great. All right. With that, we'll take questions from the audience.
Hi. So something we haven't heard, which I believe belongs to the AI topic, is explainability and bias, especially in the retail industry. Want to make a comment on it?
Sure. I'll give my take. So in financial industry, that's a very big issue because they need to figure out what went wrong if it does go wrong. So there is interesting work still, as far as I know, mostly in academia on figuring out how to make algorithms explainable. The shortcut that we take on that is that since it's humans ultimately that train our AI, you can also iteratively exclude different humans and see if it arrives at the same outcome. So since there's humans at the outset, you can, if not prevent bias, then at least figure out where it comes from.
So I would just like to add on this. So it's actually a very interesting question, very important question in AI right now. So while there is, the AI is considered as a black box, I would suggest to check this paper. I think it's by Dr. Matt Zeller, probably isn't clarified right now. It's about how to see what a network has learned. And this paper is about visualizing the filters. I'm not sure if you've heard of convolutional neural networks. It's like mimicking how a visual cortex visualizes something. If you recognize something, there are layers of mechanism happening. So he has put the learnings, how these layers look like. And the lucky part is I'm a computer vision engineer. So in a way, if you can visualize these filters, that explains something what a filter has learned. The paper might be a good, worth looking at it.
Yeah, and just to add, I think this will be the next sort of frontier of AI and deep learning. I think this has to be solved. I don't know how long it's going to take to solve it. I don't know if academia has the answers for it right now, but we'll have to do it because it's not just for finance. I hear data scientists at very large companies saying, if I can't explain to the board why my model told it to have this much inventory versus that much inventory, I'm not going to go with that model. So. Next.
Yesterday, I asked a question during the Verizon presentation around the concepts of, before we even get to the models, what, and this is just a question for the panel, is what you think of in terms of the data, internal and external data, and building the concept of a marketplace model or an ontology or a digital twin of your business that you're then using to leverage those attributes in building the models that you're referring to. I'm just interested in your thoughts on what are we doing before, because there's a part of, we've talked a lot about models, we've talked about TensorFlow, we've talked about the tools, but what are we doing to actually get to the business purpose and the outcomes that we're trying to solve before we ever get there, and building a structure that is repeatable and reusable? Just interested in your thoughts on that.
I can take that. So basically, from our side, what we are looking at this point is we have the same kind of challenge. We have internal data sources, we have external data sources. We are trying to, as I was mentioning, harmonize the data, keeping it in a centralized location. And I think the whole idea is to start looking at building wrappers around it, or building operational stores versus analytical store, figuring out the best way to kind of repeatably make this data accessible to different set of users. It could be our internal analytics people, it could be external vendors or external retailers we're kind of partnering with, giving them the source of data. So that's the kind of model we are looking at right now, see how best we can leverage the different technologies available. And that's why I was mentioning the tool Data Analytics, where basically it helps us to have a better preparation of data, or how do a better data engineering beforehand, because that is a big challenge we are facing. The amount of time we spent on that is going to more significant. So we are kind of building models or data models right away in place, which can be then easily lifted and shifted for other different channels down the stream.
I would add that I think anytime that you think about building an ontology, it's usually beneficial to resist the temptation of something that you think you know and go the data-driven way and look at what the data tells you. So I cannot give you example in retail, but in healthcare, for instance, we work with most of the large pharma, and one big issue for them is something called adverse event reporting. So when things go bad, side effects of drugs, and if you ask doctors about side effects or the expert networks, and then you go and ask patients, they have nothing to do in common. These are non-intersecting sets. And so creating this dictionary of patient-driven symptoms, patient-driven side effects, patient-driven diseases, this is something where I think there is a lot of opportunity for both risk minimization, but also opportunity for creating new markets.
All right, I think with 20 seconds on the clock, I think we're out of time. So thank you for joining us today. And thank our panelists.
Thank you to all of our panelists.
Thank you.